Yeah, I'm going to be redoing everything. I'm so sorry about that.
Good, no problems. I have a stepbrother, Andrew, and
Ah,
in some languages there is a W, so it's not no worries.
okay. We are here and welcome everyone. I am Lynn Hawkins. I'm your host of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth TV show. And we are in powerful conversations for living your best life. We're in episode 23 with ANDREW SIMONEAU. And we're going to be talking about the energy of money, how to bring more money into your life. And what's so exciting for me is if any of you out there know me, you know that this is kind of the space where I started as a business coach, doing business plans and really looking at the money and the flow of money. And one of the things that I am just so intrigued about is how much I've learned over the course of my career about this thing, money energy. And I am going to share a little bit about our guest, who is just an awesome guy. I love everything that he is doing. And for us to be in this conversation about bringing this energy more into your life. And ANDREW, thank you for being here with us. And I'm just going to tell our audience a little bit about you, because you've had a journey that is not only colorful, but had a lot of learnings for you. And now, as Executive Vice President of Five Rings Financial and partner at Life Made to Order Financial, you call yourself a financial preservationist. I love that. You're a sought after motivational speaker for financial and wealth building educational workshops, sales conferences, and Toastmasters events. And ANDREW combines financial expertise, coaching, and mentoring skills to help clients and team members build wealth. What's really cool is that with a successful 20-year record of accomplishments in franchising and business ownership, ANDREW finds fulfillment in teaching others to be successful about money management, career development, and creating the energy of living a wealthy, healthy life. He's going to be sharing his wisdom and passion and expertise with us today on the subject of the energy of money and how to bring more into your life. Welcome, ANDREW.
Thank you, Lynn. It's great to be here. Thanks for that fantastic introduction. I think I'm going to record that, play that back to myself every morning.
I love it. I love it. Well, I just want to jump right into this because, again, money is a conversation that a lot of people really try to stay away from, like politics. However, one of the things that I've learned is that when you have a relationship with someone, especially if it's a good one, you want to talk about it. And there are certain things that you can do and say about your relationship and want to do and say as far as your relationship goes. But as we look at you and what you're bringing to this audience, tell us a little bit more about you and your journey to focusing on helping people with their money and growing their wealth.
I can go back when I was 19. I got in business for myself and spent about 5 years in a business training program. And I really loved the interaction with people and the teaching of others, and found myself always getting energized with taking the lessons and the experiences that I have to teach others. That transitioned into some franchise ownership where I got to teach people my style of doing business, my style of building relationship, my style of, like when you're the owner, right, of the franchise, then you get to teach everybody, this is the way we do it. And my intention was to treat all of my employees and the people that worked with me like they owned the business. And so I built a pay structure where they got paid for performance. And then over time, it gave the managers the ability to buy into that business. I thought that was my plan for good. I was like, I've arrived. This is fabulous. I had 5 Verizon retail stores around the place. And then the stock market crashed in 2008. And although some people might see that as something that was very negative, and certainly a lot of negative things or a lot of change and shift came out of that, it was actually a blessing for me. Because when the stock market crashed, I found myself out of business. I found myself $50,000 in debt, asking two questions. What am I going to do when I grow up? And who didn't teach me about money? And what I found out was I hadn't been tracking my money. I hadn't been paying attention. I had just been lucky that I was making more money every month and for a bunch of years than I was spending. And when things started to get tight, when the stock market started to go down, I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't tracking. And so I found myself out of business. That I ended up in some learning situations about money and the 6 key principles of compound interest and time value of money, protecting money. And what I found after about 3 years of hanging around and actually like rebuilding and reframing with these new tools, my experience with money, that I really liked teaching people. And I made a decision about 3 years in that I would start teaching around the country, and have now been for the last 7 years teaching everything that I've learned and what I went through with money. And what's interesting is that money overlays relationship for me, and it overlays community for me, and it overlays business for me, and it overlays myself and the health of myself. And I've noticed that all of those pieces all kind of are attached together at that core of money is currency, and currency is a current, and current is an electrical world, and current is energy, and energy is light. And so it all comes back to this, like, what is that divine centered light or energy that each of us has? And when it's a little distorted or it's a little filtered, I'm constantly looking for tools and experiences and knowledge and people to upgrade that, and go get up the escalator to the 2nd floor and learn a whole new version or a whole new value system or understanding. And part of my gene keys is teaching that, doing it first, being uncomfortable. I remember being 10 and a slide got handed to me where this picture video is like, everything that's ever going to happen to you is okay. It might be hard and uncomfortable, but you're going to get through it because you're going to have a pile of experiences and knowledge that you can then take and use to have compassion and empathy and teach others along their path. And I've learned now that all of us are just in different paths and different legs of the path. We're at different checkpoints along the I don't want to call it a race, but we're in different checkpoints, and it's not good or bad. We're just all at different stages, and the best mistakes to learn from are somebody else's.
Absolutely. I mean, it saves on the pain factor, right?
Very
But
much.
you made such a great point about being on this journey and at various checkpoints. And if you aren't paying attention, there are a lot of checkpoints that you could potentially miss. And one of the reasons that this show is happening and that you're teaching people is so that people will be more aware and alert that these checkpoints are out here and not pass them by when they show up. And I really appreciate that. That was really, really great. And, you mentioned that there was a lot of learning
Mhm.
on your journey. Who are some of the mentors that you encountered, or some of the books that you
Yeah.
found along the way?
So at 19, I was handed this book, The Magic of Thinking Big. It's by David Schwartz. And I remember that this was my first experience into reading a book other than the textbook for college. And what stood out for me about this particular book was somebody was telling me, hey, Andre, you are only limited by your thoughts. You're only limited by how big you think. You're only holding yourself back by the story you're telling yourself. And to have somebody hand me that book that I looked up to, which was the second part, was finding a mentor, finding somebody that was already where I wanted to be, finding somebody that had walked the path, and I could like maybe lift up in my little drone, right, with the camera on. I could put it up in the sky and I could see out ahead. Oh, look, that mentor of mine, he's way up there ahead of me on the path. I should probably follow him because I like the results he's getting or she's getting. And that was a combination for me of that book and getting to hang around with some people who had been implementing this and doing something different than just the day-to-day going to work and doing a job, which is great, but sometimes we can just get in the habit of just showing up to help somebody else get their dreams. And I figured out in college, because I dropped out actually after 2 years, that I didn't necessarily need my degree, or I chose to be an entrepreneur instead of going to work for a company. And that led to a guy by the name of Brendan Burchard, who I have been studying with. And before Brendan was Jeffrey Gitomer. He's written a whole series of books about interacting and relationships and people. Seth Godin is another big one for me. He wrote a book called Purple Cow. And it's that idea of, driving down the road and all of a sudden you look out the window, cow, cow, white, white, black, black, cow, 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 and all of a sudden purple. You stop your car, you jump out and you're like, what? There's a purple cow. And when you can be that purple cow and do something just a little different, it stands out. And of late, Joe Dispenza's got my attention.
Mine as well.
Yeah, a thought that creates an experience, that creates an emotion, that then tells our genes to turn on or turn off. I've read all of his books, a couple of them a few times. Becoming Supernatural is probably my #1 favorite at the moment.
I'm halfway through.
Yeah, I think I'm on my 5th read.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
And I'm saying read, but I actually listen.
Yeah.
I've got Audible's my friend. I spend a lot of time listening just because I can, my brain does better as I listen to create story, and the way that I do notes has been really, really fantastic for me to grow my knowledge base. And Robert Kiyosaki's a couple out there. And then in the world of money, Warren Buffett writes some really, there's a lot of really great authors around money, and it's just disseminating which one you resonate with. Jen Sincero, who wrote I'm a Badass at Making Money. I think it's Badass at Making Money, and a whole series of books.
That is awesome. I love that. And it brings to mind too that each one of them kind of leads to the next level thinking, because Brendan Burchard, Seth Godin, Robert Kiyosaki, and another one that comes to mind is Vishen Lakhiani, and with Joe Dispenza, really taking the fact that because we are energy beings, we can actually choose to live in a higher dimension of ourselves, which also is where money has a resonant energy. And when we're talking about money and the energy of money, what are some of the ways that you look at money as an analogy, or bringing an analogy to how one could look at money in order to up-level their thinking around money? Because a lot of people are in the stuck, the job. Without the job, I have no way. Or, you mentioned it, the job is building somebody else's dreams. So what about my own? Or, money just doesn't like me. Money doesn't grow on trees, all of these things. So give us a little bit of insight about how you connect money to some of the higher thinking that we can go to.
It started for me in that 2021. I had a teacher, one of my mentors, who said it like this. He said, he said it, I believe it. And what he speaks to is that whatever I think, gosh, I'm going to get an F on this test. Your brain goes, oh, let me prove to you that you'll get an F on this test. I'm not good with money. Oh, well, let me prove to you that you're not good with money. And so understanding that money is energy, so are our words. We can go back to ancient Aramaic, and the word abracadabra, which is, abracadabra, comes from the ancient Aramaic saying avra cadavra, which means, transliterated, as you say, as you speak, so shall it be. And it's this idea of whatever we think, we can create, both positive and negative. And I teach one of my fun talks that I do is, if you went on a first date with money, would money go on a second date with you? And I love this analogy because we can be so relatable to, if you went on a date with somebody and you got her, for me, if I had gotten her door and I was very much a gentleman, went to a nice restaurant, we went for a walk, and I dropped her off, and there's this whole energy that's getting placed in this whole resonance that's getting shared between the two of us. When I call back next week to say, hey, would you like to go out again? The answer is probably yes, as long as I fit it, right? But if you take that and you're a little pushy and you just go to the pizza place and you just, it's a little lax and no big deal, and it's very like, whatever, that energy that the other person feels might be like, no, not really want to go on that second date. So with money, how do we think about money? Are we respecting money? When money comes in, are we putting some aside for us first? When money comes in, are we honoring the money in all of our relationships where we pay our bills, where we pay our debts? Where are we putting our money first? And whatever we do with that money is feeling how we treat it. Like, I hear a lot of people say, yeah, whenever my money comes in, it always leaves. Well, that's because that's what you say. And so our brain is trying to prove to us everything we think, everything that we say. A really good example or a good work would be, grab a little notebook and for a week write down every dollar you spend: lunch, gum, coffee, bills, and at the end of the week tally it, look how much you've spent on different things, and then make a recognition of like, wow, I spent $212 on coffee. Do you want to do that? And what's the feeling? If you have the feeling of like, ooh, I feel guilty, I feel bad about that, well, what you just did is attuned or attracted the energy of guilt to that spending of $212. So every time you go buy another coffee, you're going to pull that energy back in there. And then you're going to create an experience over and over and over and over again. By looking at the budgeting of what you're spending money on, it allows you to make shifts and make changes. Where attention goes, energy flows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is a great way to do this for a month. Look at your money, figure out what you're actually spending on, and then make a proactive decision. Instead of being run by the whims of how I feel, make a proactive decision to, you know what, I'm going to spend only $100 on coffee. I'm only going to do this. I'm only going to spend it here. When you get in control, your money feels that you're in control, and it feels grounded. It feels like it's loved. Sometimes I say that, does money think you're schizophrenic? Right? You get all this money in and you spend it all in, and you're like, I need money, but oh, I'm scared to have money. I need money, but oh my gosh, it never stays. Like, money feels that, just like your partner would feel that, just like your spouse would feel that, just like a date would feel that. And it's people, I think, sometimes we forget that this happens everywhere. You know, it's our dogs will feel that, our neighbors will feel that, our friends feel that. How many of us have a friend that we got up, we tripped, something happened, we had a bad day, and our friend said, hey, is everything okay? Our friend felt us. So that energy goes and it follows.
That is great. I love that. Would money go on a second date with you? A lot of people are going to have to admit, I don't think so, but how can I change that? And so thank you for those practical solutions. You know, look at how you're speaking. If you're saying, it comes in so fast that I don't even remember seeing it, or, you know, too much month and not enough money. That's all stuff that speaks into this energy. And what we want to do is shift that. There's more than enough money for the month. There's more than enough money, and I'm grateful that I get to spend this $100 or $200 if that's what I want to spend on my coffee. And I'm grateful that I get to give away some. You know, a lot of people, and I'll bring this in, but you know, this is not about religion. I know that there are a lot of people who look at tithing. You know, well, I want to tithe, but I don't want to tithe into a church. Well, you don't have to tithe into a church, but to be able to say to yourself, I am giving 10% of my money to a worthy cause. it says something to money that is really important in this flow of energy. And I love how you brought that in too, as far as the flow, because everything is flow. And if you are recognizing that your flow is stifled or that it has hiccups, it's something to pay attention to. And, I want to bring this in too, in today's financial environment, the word is spreading about, should we expect another financial disaster? It's coming. Some people are already saying it's coming. Some are saying it's here. We're just not seeing it yet. What's your take on that? And what insight do you feel you can share to calm or prepare people? And, I'm not asking for any financial advice.
Understand.
And, I know that, that's taboo in a lot of industries.
Right.
But I really would like for you to answer that from the perspective of what interjecting that sense of fear
Mhm.
might have on people.
Well, one, I did spend a bunch of years studying the whole socioeconomic dynamics of our economy and how it really is led by the herd, right? And herd mentality meaning the people of our economy. And to your point, when or if enough people feel like there's going to be a little dip in the market, that's when it happens, because there's enough of us that feel it because of either fear or, gosh, it's been going up for so long. So there is a sense of when enough people feel that way, it happens. And it's interesting because, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You put the cart before the horse. It's like, where did that happen? The interesting thing about fear is that fear comes from anxiety, it comes from stress, or it creates anxiety, it creates stress. And the more that we're fearful, the more that I find that I'm afraid of something, the more I focus on it, the more I focus on it, the more I bring it into my reality. So I found over my last 20, 25 years is that if I focus on my personal economy, if I focus on my personal house and I get my financial household in order, having some money saved, having some money here, having some money protected, having some money that I'm willing to risk. If I'm in a place where I feel good, one of the things I love is I love having a whole year of money saved so that when I do business on a daily basis, I'm not trying to pay next week or next month. I'm trying to pay for next year. And there's a groundedness in that. It's like when we have a job. You work for a company and you know that paycheck's going to come every week, every week, every week, every week. And that feels good. When we start to worry or have fear, that opens the door to the energy of what might not happen or what could go wrong, or that energy of like, I'm starting to worry about what if I don't have it. I love that you used the word gratitude earlier. Joe Dispenza says, gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. And when I feel, I speak about it like when we're on our walk, right? Each of us is on a walk, or each of us is on the path of our own walk, and each of us has an idea of what we want our walk to look like, and the people we want to interact with, and the lives we want to change. That's my belief. And as we're on the walk of our walk, there is something called the slipstream, and that is that energetic eddy of air or water that circles behind us moving. If you think of a truck going down the road, if you get it behind that truck, it goes woof, and it pulls you. That's called the slipstream. Well, there's this little ball of light, energetic bliss that's always in that slipstream. And so it's choosing to focus it, and I guess I'm flipping it, right? Instead of being in the fear of it, because if we are in the fear, what we tend to do is attract more of the same. And the choosing, which I think is the big deal, is the choosing of how we approach and how we think about it and what we focus on. And those are the pieces coming back to thought creates experience, which creates emotion. It's when the fear comes up, it's like, okay, speak it, write it, acknowledge it, and then I call it a Franklin T. right? Put that down the left side of your paper, and on the right side of your paper, write down the things that I'm doing on a daily or weekly or monthly basis that are counteracting. You know, I'm making my connections, I'm meeting some people, I'm meeting with businesses, I'm having relationships. And when I start to look at every place I'm giving back and I have that gratitude, it's that gratitude that brings receivership, which creates the abundance, which would be that opposite of fear. A friend of mine recently said, so great, it was actually this weekend, said, fear teaches us what our boundaries are. Fear teaches us what's important to us. When I have fear, it's because, or anger, it's because it's important to me. It's because that's my boundary, that's my edge. And I learned many years ago to hold my fear in and hold my anger in, which interestingly enough, in our body, when you hold that in, if you don't let that out emotionally, it will come out of your body physically. And it's a good reminder for me to be present to express that. Just put the words out and then see where they shift. But don't focus on that. Don't live in it, but acknowledge it. And then acknowledge for what it's for. What boundary is that giving me? What edge does that produce for me? What understanding that shows me that that's important? And I think when it comes to money, right, as things get worried in the world, the people that are the most worried, the most fear, are the ones living on the most edge, meaning they might be living paycheck to paycheck. They might have so much out there in expenditures of money that if something did bump, like an '08 when it happened, the people that had the most leverage were the ones that felt it the most. And so I think, you know, we all live in cycles. Everything is a cycle, everything is a wavelength. So I think that that feeling that we're all having, that this could come, if we reinterpret that as, hey, maybe we got a little too used to living too far in the edge and we're leveraging too much, maybe we should invite ourselves to bring that a little closer in, be a little more comfortable, so that we have our resources, so that we don't have to be fearful of it. We can be like, yeah, if it happened, cool, just pull the belt tight a little bit, a couple of months, but I'm going to be okay. Versus, oh my gosh, if something happened, I'd be upside down in a week, or I'd be upside down in a day.
Oh, that's awesome advice. And you mentioned that's exactly some of the stuff that impacts health and stress, you know, create stress and anxiety. And I love that it begins with your thinking. It begins with the stories that you're telling yourself. And a lot of that may come from how you grew up, what you heard as you were growing up, what somebody said to you as you were young enough to internalize it, interpret and internalize it a certain way. But we're here to tell you now that you can do this differently. And you can do it differently and allow it to actually impact your life differently. Positive impact, negative impact, and in the middle where you think you're not having an impact, you're still having an impact. And that is the one where you are really in less control, because that one allows your subconscious to drive you, and it can take you on a roller coaster ride. So interjecting the positive, you know, and I love how you gave that kind of pathway to acknowledge that you're thinking this, acknowledge that you're feeling this, but then you also acknowledge whether or not it's serving you, and acknowledge if it's not, you want to do something differently. And I actually teach that too as a tool to my clients. I call it the one tap solution. And if you know anything about tapping, this is not necessarily about having one tapping location and one tap, but it is about one tapping location and the multiple taps, because you want to go through this process, because it is a process. When you think a thought and you don't address it, I know a lot of people say, just let it go, just send it back. Well, even that is a process. But when you acknowledge it and you thank it for showing up for you, you have the ability to say, I want to think something differently going forward, and you can make that shift. Um, it's amazing to me how we can come to some of these realizations from so many different perspectives and opportunities, and using so many different tools. Is there a particular tool that you use? I mean, you know this thought process, and that's a tool. Is there something else that you use in particular?
I have I, I've learned a lot of different tools and different pieces, and I've one of my gene keys is to pioneer and create new ideas or be the start codon, like it's to start something. Um, and what I've been present to is I ask the question, is this a contribution to me? And I have this realization. So when I have a thought, I think of it as a viewfinder guy, right? If you remember the old school red viewfinder, you go click and it would circle, click, and you'd see the next video, right? So I have this idea that there's a viewfinder guy up there. And when I have a thought or a video or a thought, it goes bloof, right? And there's the viewfinder, right? I get this new slide. And what I've done is I take that as an opportunity to pause, look at this new slide, this new thought, this new idea, and actually pause before reacting. And the next question I ask is, okay, or I say to myself, this is just an event. And every event is only an event until I put on it the positive or the negative. And I think of it as Pokemon balls, right? That there's a Pokemon ball that's a negative experience, and then there's a Pokemon ball that's a positive experience, and which one of them am I choosing to open? And recognizing that that pause lets the positive and the negative, and then I can actually play out both of them before reacting. And then I realize that my reaction is all a function of conditioning, right? You made a comment about how we grew up, what the stories were told to us. And something like 95% of our life is lived, 95% of our life is lived from a automatic response from a previous conditioning. The way my dad thought about money, the way my dad spent money, the way my mom thought about money. And interestingly enough, not even what they taught me or told me. I just learned through osmosis. I learned by their energy when we go to the grocery store, their tenseness around doing the bills, watching my dad fret at the dining room table, as he did the bills, or get stressed with my mom. And so what do? Well, at an age before 15, you take that on as your program, at least, right? And so now it's like, I ask the question, is this conditioning? Viewfinder guy hands me the slide and I question it. Is that the conditioning I want? Do I want the positive Pokemon or the negative Pokemon? And so now I get to make a choice as each event happens. That for me is a really big tool, and it's presence, right? I'm always playing the game of how do I stay present in this moment? Because my mind wants to live way in the future and not worry about what's happening right now. And my mind wants to go way back to the past and actually hand me anything that was energetic. And it's funny because it doesn't care if it was drama negative or happy positive. It just wants to keep me in the energy. So if I have a thought of something negative, it just hands me the experience, which creates the emotion, and I feel that energy. And the universe, right? God doesn't care whether it's positive or negative. It's just, how does it feel? And so getting a choice, and I think that's, for me, it's what do I choose and what can I do to pause? What game can I play with myself to not just react? When my partner, when a friend says something that triggers me, how do I, is it that person saying it? Are they really trying to trigger me and make me have some energy? Or am I running an old program? 9 times out of 10, I'm running a program. So the same thing with money. Same thing with health, right? Same thing comes to my body. It's as I grew up and I started, whatever I learned about food, whatever was tasting good, the sugar gets me. And, I made a decision a while back to figure out fat and then figure out lectins and then figure out sugar, and spent the last 5 years kind of making these choices and using this viewfinder guy to be like, do I want the reaction I'm going to get from eating those tomatoes that I happen to have a not good reaction to? They're yummy. Eggplant's delicious. Love garbanzo beans, but my body goes, no. And that's viewfinder guy going, you're going to feel bad if you eat those. So is the taste worth feeling bad? And it took some time. I ate 100% dark chocolate for about a year. I still do, but that was every time I craved something, I'd go eat chocolate with no sugar in it, kind of taking this over to food. That helped me get over the hump of the addiction, so to speak, of I need the sugar, or I need the lectin, or I need the whatever that was.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you brought that in because you're right. We can get triggered by so many things. And a lot of times one of our greatest responses to the triggers, especially when it's something difficult to move through, we go to what's available to us, which is typically food. And we end up going to the types of food that don't necessarily serve us. And I say it that way because they are the comfort foods. They are the, let me quell my anxiety with this piece of cake or this, box of donuts or this, whatever, which are not the foods that serve us. And I say that because we talk about conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that the food industry, just like pharma, has helped us to recondition into a state of conditioning that runs this program over and over and over again for us. And we typically have to have a traumatic event to basically open the window and say, oh my God, this is showing up for me. And then give ourselves the choice about doing something about it. And where anxiety and stress, I was telling somebody the other day that, people are in so much stress and the pandemic happened and more stress. And now we're shifting out and into, a lot of people think back, but there's no going back. It's always going forward into the next iteration of whatever it is. Also can be stressful. And then it's like, well, what do we do with it? And if you're noticing some ill health, you want solutions, and solutions are not dead foods. And by dead foods, I mean the donuts and the cakes and the things that have that were not life before they got made into something that we got conditioned to believe was life. And then we look up and say, oh my God, what happened to me? I'm 100 pounds heavier. I've got this ailment and that ailment, inflammation and more stress. And stress is the silent killer. Stress kills more people than heart disease and cancer combined, because they manifest into these diseases that stress being the root cause. It's like stress is manageable. Stress is something that you can do something with, just like money. Money is energy. Stress is the bringing up of energy. Put stress and money together, money's going to say, I don't want to play over here. Put stress and food together, the food that is good for you, the whole foods, the plant foods, and stress don't get along. The whole foods, the plant foods actually do things to cause stress to shrink back. And the foods that allow stress to continue and become exacerbated and grow are the foods that you find on the inside of the grocery aisles. You don't find them in the produce stores. And when I talk about the farmers market, I know the farmers market has the fresh meats and all of the seafoods and all of that as well. But I'm talking about the Garden of Eden. A friend of mine has a farm in Pennsylvania, and getting through the winter time is like one of the most difficult times of the year for him, because he can't go and get his hands in the dirt. So he decided he was going to do indoor gardening in the wintertime.
It's great.
And yeah, it's like there are so many things that we can do. I remember hearing like one of my great aunts talking about gardening and how having her hands in the dirt was therapeutic for her.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't understand it, but I remember hearing it.
Mm.
And that thought has resonated over time. And it's like, at this point, I can honestly say, oh, I know what she was talking about then. Um, so, I say all of that to bring us into this whole food, plant-based diet, which is actually a lifestyle. I don't like the word diet because it's
I
too
agree.
too connected to die.
Yeah. Oh, I never
And
thought of it like that. Yeah, you're
oh,
right. You're
oh,
right. Good,
and then
good.
the tea, die,
Oh yeah, look at
you
that
know.
guy.
Um,
That's beautiful.
and I look at it as being a lifestyle because it does mean that you want to shop differently, you want to cook differently, you want to, enjoy family and friends differently. Um, and with that being said, share with us, you're a healthy guy. You've talked about how this journey has created some shifts for you over time and that it's taken a little conscious effort to be applied into it all. But what are a couple of the best lifestyle related things that you do to be in great health?
Sure. I appreciate you using the grocery store example of the center shopping on the outside. It was 11, 12, 13 years ago for me that I made this choice of like, hey, I'm going to look at my body. I'm going to look at my health. I'm going to start to put the same energy. It coincided when I lost my business. I got divorced. I gave up my house. I was a new half time of 4 kids. I'm like, well, shoot, since I'm doing all of that, I might as well look at everything else. And I remember a little controversial, but my first decision was I'm a little dairy. My kids are dairy messes with them. So I made this decision to do no dairy, no sugar, and what was the one other thing? And no wheat. And that was my first decision about 13 years ago. And I did. I literally went in the grocery store, only shopped on the outside, and my intention was I needed to be able to pick it, harvest it, or kill it. And if I couldn't do that, I didn't buy it. So that's where I started 13 years ago. And that morphed into, and the part I didn't realize is that it takes about 3 months of changing the food you eat in order for your body to calm down from your immune system to be dysregulated or for your immune system to be stimulated. And the next thing that I did was I read this article about sugar. Our body only needs like 2 tablespoons of sugar a day, something like that, an athlete of like processed. And then I understood this. I learned that sugar, the like white processed sugar or wine or alcohol or the really carb that goes right to sugar, it stimulates a part in our brain that cocaine stimulates. And so I was like, that's interesting. And it has about a 30-minute shelf life. So you put sugar in your body, 30 minutes later, it goes here, it stimulates, and then it's gone. And so your body goes, more, please. And so that got me on this, got me on this road of like, wow. And having 4 kids under 8, seeing with them and the way they reacted was really apparent. So it started with looking more towards things that had been alive really recently. It went into, I spent some time with Dave Asprey and the Bulletproof Diet and really got my body like good with the MCT and the XCT oil and how that goes in my body. And then I noticed that butter would still scratch my throat. And so I was having a little intolerance to dairy, which led to David Gundry. And I found about lectins and found out that, yes, I happen to be sensitive to a handful of lectins. And so I stopped eating those lectins and my indigestion went away like that. And I went down to my college weight over the course of 15 months, 3 sizes. And then that morphed into, let's not do sugar. And so I cut out all, no wine, no alcohol, because it goes right to sugar, no bread carbs, and no processed sugar. And I had to eat chocolate 100% dark because every time I craved sugar, I needed to put something in my mouth. And I found that the next 3 months, my body calmed down and I went to this college weight again, and I felt clear. My body was alive. The energy I had, I figured out that, you know what, I went 3 months and I slept till I was done instead of waking up to an alarm. Like that was one of the, and here's a neat idea. When I got divorced and lost my house and lost my business, I could have been like, oh, woe is me, this is so bad. And yes, it was hard, but I had this slide from Viewfinder Guy that said, hey, everything that's ever happened to you happened for a reason, because there is also a positive Pokemon ball. I may not have seen it right away, but I was expecting it. I was wanting it or desiring it.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden I found I'm doing my food a little different. I'm doing my work a little different. I'm doing my money a little different. And all of a sudden, those three things all coalesced and came together in this coherence of energy where it was like getting brighter and brighter and lighter and easier and more flow. And I found out that I've reframed my comfort foods. My comfort foods are 100% dark chocolate, no sugar. My comfort foods are sweet potatoes in an Instapot. My comfort with coconut oil. My comfort foods are dates, pecans. I make the most amazing scratch-made chocolate chip cookies with almond flour and either monk fruit sweetener, honey, or maple syrup. And then I decided I wanted to eat chocolate again. So I make my own chocolate, 100% dark chocolate, cacao butter, and either maple syrup, honey, or monk fruit sweetener. Stevia still has that little taste for me, but you know, I just get it just past bitter. And so I've reframed what my comfort foods are. And it's like, I go into the grocery store today and I look at these foods that I was like, they might taste good because my taste bud activates because of the sugar in my brain, but the nutritional value is super low. And what I've realized is the more, I love the way you use the word alive, right? The food that's closer to alive or most recently alive, that is, you know, full of color. I do a little bit of fun travel and I want to make sure I'm really good in the morning. So I found some reds and greens that I put in with, I learned from Medical Medium, the liver rescue book. I learned, I love wild blueberries, dragon fruit, banana with some greens, some ginger with some water, and that's my breakfast. And that has just totally shifted. I thought there's no way I could have that much sugar for breakfast. And my body's like, no, please, we need all this glucose. This is rebuilding so many parts and my brain is so clear. And it's neat to see the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And in my work, when somebody raises their hand and says, I want to learn about money, I find out that they're doing stuff with their health and they're doing stuff with their relationships, they're doing stuff with their personal development and their psyche. It's just like this, all of it is happening. And at the same time, when people say, I'm not interested in learning about my money, I notice that they're also not doing things about other parts. And everybody's got their own timing. I've learned that I was once in that foot. And so a friend of mine said it to me like this. She said, why would I judge you? Because I see exactly in you what I am. And so who am I to judge? And so it's more of a place of getting to walk the walk. And I sometimes call myself a cosmic tour guide, that I get to meet people and share my experience when they're ready to ask and learn and then go down the road. And it's really the best mistakes to learn from are somebody else's. And it's, people say to me, gosh, how do you, like from a food perspective, how do you give up pizza and hamburgers? And how do you give up some of the things that's like, it's not that I give them up, it's that I reframed and reconditioned what feels the best in my body. And sure, I might have that every now and then, but it's not my staple anymore. And I actually ask my body, do we want this? And it's like, a lot of times my body says no. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I just started listening because I wanted to feel good all the time. And it's been a really eye-opening experience to have all of this knowledge and to learn, to get to walk this path.
I love how you said that. I want to feel good. And I think that's something that a lot of us end up learning, to reframe how it is that we look at life and our lives. Because who told us that we were supposed to live life and feel good? It's not something that you learned growing up.
No.
And it is something that if you are evolving into your highest and best self, that you know is your responsibility to do for yourself. Because how can you do for others, honestly, if you're not doing that for yourself? I am my highest and best self today, and I feel so good because of it. And you can, that energy is resonant energy. I just want to say, Andre, thank you so much. This has been so cool to be in this conversation with you. And as we're bringing our conversation to a close, is there some wisdom that you believe is important to share with our audience today that might have, positive impact? I mean, everything that you've said does, but is
I
there
receive. Thank you.
anything that you would like to add on to that or highlight?
I think the question for me came to listening and paying attention to what my body intuitively knows, energetically desires, versus am I running a habit, a condition, a program? And it's really easy. Like, we all have a routine, right? We get up in the morning off of one side of bed, we stumble into the bathroom. If we go to the bathroom, we brush our teeth, we do it with our right hand. We have this exact same order that's always happening. And unless acted upon by some outside source, we'll run that habit tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. And I can guarantee you that you will be 10 years from now right where you are today. I've also learned that you and I can look at our parents. We can look at the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with, and wherever our parents are in those 5 people, that's where we'll end up unless acted upon by an outside force. So by choosing to be in the present and asking the question, is this a contribution to me? And to listen to what do I want? What do I want it to look like? And sometimes when the pendulum slides over to this side of this is what I don't want, right? This doesn't feel good. I'm not liking this. And sometimes health issues are just like, I don't feel awake, or I feel tired, or I feel sluggish. But sometimes those health issues are, I'm having a hernia, I'm having some bowel disorder, so much is tied to our autoimmune that we're just giving all kinds of labels to it. So when the pendulum slides over here to this, I don't like this, that in the unseen, the Sephirot, automatically creates the list of what the pendulum wants. This is what I do want. And so it's listening and being aware of, if this is what I don't want, what is the pendulum on the other side? Because contrast always exists in everything. What is it that I do want? And start to ask, and this is the thing, am I willing to do to get what I want? Am I willing to change? And a lot of us would call that uncomfortable. A lot of us would call that scary or fearful. I use the words new and different because, again, it's program and conditioning that's scary. It's programming that's uncomfortable. It's only uncomfortable if you say it's uncomfortable. Being fearful and excited are the same 2 energies in the body. It's just which are you putting the Pokemon positive or the Pokemon negative ball on it. So for me, it's new and different. So for me, it starts with language. Being really present with the words I use and how I describe my life so that I can create what I want it to look like. Instead of looking my past conditioning and my past program and the circuit board that got installed in my brain, instead of letting it run me, it's like, let me reprogram, let me recode that. And whenever I'm having a tough spot, I put more knowledge in. That's my way, right? The hardest year, the most new and different year I had was 2019, and I had a bunch of things come up for me, and my goal was, I'm going to read 100 books this year. And I have a mentor, Jim Rohn, who talked about reading 100 books, and I'm good friends with his marketing guy who's still alive, and we have lunch together, and I remember him saying that, and I'm like, that's me. I'm going to do that this year. And all of that new information in basically pushes out the old conditioning. It pushes out the different information because there's not space for both. And then it allowed me to like really see everything as new and different, and then create the way I wanted it to look, instead of it looking like the way that my program and conditioning created it. So listening and being present to the new and different and being excited about that new and different. And what they used to say, every cloud has a silver lining. It's like,
Yes.
what's the positive, right? I can look back now and see that everything that's ever happened that was hard was amazing, and I'm so grateful for, because it got me to here. And yet I could also look back and say, yeah, that was hard and that was difficult. And some people said, you know, how did you get through that? And it was like, well, I chose to see, where does this better me? And I've dodged a lot of bullets because of all that negative stuff. There's a lot of things that I'm glad didn't happen if I had stayed in the situation that I was in. But that's hindsight, 2020. So it's trusting that my divinity flows through and creates the walk that I choose to have based on the feeling, which started with an experience, which started with a thought. So what thought am I thinking?
That is beautiful. Well said. And let that thought be, take the next step forward. Even though you may not know what that is, just take the next step forward, trusting. I love how you said that. Trusting that as you're moving into what is ahead of you, that the universe and God and angels and everybody out there that's supporting you is there to do just that. And I love this conversation. This is like my wheelhouse, where to stay and bring some excitement into. I really just love this. And as we're wrapping up today, everyone, I want to say thank you for joining us. I want to let you know that Andre's information will be posted in the text as well as in the comments below this video. Reach out to him. Find out what he's doing to help and possibly can help you to think differently about your money, because money is energy and we want all the good and feel good stuff that we can get. And let us know what else you would like as far as subject matter for the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth shows. I look to you to help me to bring in some of the best topic matter for our audience. And that means that you gotta let me know. But remember, comment below and share. We appreciate you for sharing this conversation and other conversations, because we're doing this to disrupt the thinking that normal is behind us. We've got to establish new norms, and it is in front of us. And if you're a health, wisdom, or wealth practitioner and you'd like to share your knowledge and expertise with our audience, to be in this conversation, to reach out to me. You can PM me, message me on Facebook, message me on LinkedIn. You can find me, email me, vlynn@p3academy.com. Let's connect. And with that said, everyone, Andre, thank you so much for bringing this to us, for being in this conversation with me.
It's very much my pleasure. I receive, and I'm grateful to have spent the time. Thank you. I look forward to our next.
All right. Very good. All right, everyone. We've got some exciting things coming up in future episodes. So do stay tuned, turn on your notifications and be a part of it all. And again, please do us a favor and yourself a favor, share, invite others to take a look at this information. Thanks again. And until next time, be well, live, love, and make a bigger positive impact in the world.
Thank you.